gospel today.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You can see it. In my conversations with people this past month, I've learned that the winter weather has been quite tough on many. It's been hard to cope with the snowfalls that have stopped everything to a standstill. It was sometimes just too much winter for our city to deal with. Our trains and buses were unable to work properly. Cars without winter tires could not meander through the snow and the ice. And even if they were equipped, it was not always safe to do so, as there were not enough snowplows to go around and remove the snow, and roads, bridges, and highways were often really hard to drive through. Some people even tried to walk. And despite the fact that there is a bylaw that fines people for not removing snow on the sidewalks around their places, I could also see that many sidewalks actually didn't get cleared away, making it quite difficult and dangerous for those on foot. And one day, I spent over 2 hours clearing snow at Christ the King, because the snow removal hired did not come the entire day, and people using wheelchairs within our building needed to come in and go out. I'm not equipped for 2 hours of snow removal. I was like totally exhausted for the next week. And as I grew up out east with winter for about 6 months of the year, snow doesn't scare me. I like snow. I get excited when it snows, and I'm actually a bit relieved when it snows because I get a real taste of winter. And even if it's only for a brief moment and before it melts away. But snow didn't always melt away so easily this year, or if it did melt away, it would sometimes melt so quickly that the streets were flooded. And I know this past month, I think it was the first year here that I could really see the various reasons why snow stresses y'all out. And apart from the snowfall, I've also noted with all the rain and the gray cloud cover throughout this past month, how incredibly dark it gets here during the day, and how tired and low many people seem to be because of it. It's harder to get out and about, harder for those who sink deeper into depression or loneliness, when it's harder to find the energy to reach out and to connect with those who seem to be equally as tired and low. And to be honest, I've been quite surprised at how tired I've felt this past week, and how much my body just wants to sleep and sleep and sleep with all of this darkness. And I try to coax my body to wake up. I sit underneath the big full spectrum lamp every morning, trying to trick my body that there is actually sunshine out there. And I take loads of vitamin D, the vitamin we get from sunshine, like 5,000 milligrams a day. And I exercise in the morning, I go for walks in the evening with my husband, who gets me to get off my butt and get outside and go up into the mountains to breathe some fresh air when I can. But I have to be honest, I would much rather hibernate like a bear and sleep throughout these super dull and dark winter months here and be woken up when the sun is shining again. I try my best to push myself out of it and to live each day one step at a time. But my body knows that it needs way more light to thrive and to just feel alive. And in my observation, I think that there are a lot of people that feel similarly around these parts. Winter is hard for many people to get through. It's hard to even want to offer the little energy that we have to share our salt and to share our light with others in seasons like this. It's hard to get out of our cozy homes, hard to move ourselves out and even receive the salt and the light that there is for us in this world. But in times like these, our bodies remind us we really need it. We really need it. Because the salt and light our bodies need is really a matter of life and death. And that's why they're so important in our gospel today. Scholar Amy Oden reminds us that salt and light in Jesus' time were not produced so easily. and it required great ingenuity and skill to access and conserve it. Salt and light were precious commodities with the power to sustain life. Light or fire was needed for heat, for cooking, for sight, for safety in the darkness. And salt was needed to season and preserve food, and in a hot desert, it was especially needed to maintain proper hydration. In the time of Jesus, it was really understood that salt and light are really a matter of life and death for the human body. And even today, salt and light are a matter of life and death. I mean, could you imagine what our winters would be like without light? Without warm homes to shelter us? Without accessible food to eat, especially when it cannot grow outside anymore? Physically, we cannot survive without light or heat or food or salt. And spiritually, we cannot survive without the light and salt of God. We wouldn't have life. And without the grace of God at work within us to be salt and light, our world would not have life. There is something absolutely essential about our role in our world, in our communities, our families, our friendships, to help bring life to others. Our world needs people to actively be involved in loosing the bonds of injustice, in undoing the yokes of burden, in letting the oppressed go free, in sharing bread with the hungry, bringing the homeless inside our homes, covering the vulnerable and the naked, and not hiding ourselves from our families and friends. The world does not need us to hide ourselves, but to be out there living. Jesus came to set us free, to follow him, to live into the paths of ripeness, of being ripe and ready to receive and to share what we have with others. Ripe to share the salt and light that is made ready within us to share. When you are called to be salt and light, it means that what you have to give right now is the gift of life to sustain someone. You have been made ready to give it. You are not to underestimate yourself and the difference that you can make in this world. Today, Jesus tells us all, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Do you notice the verb that is being used in our gospel? You are. You are. Not you will be. Not you have been. Not you will become. You are. Salt and light is not something Jesus' disciples will become in the future. It's not something you need to learn how to do, how to be, or receive special training to be. Salt and light are at the heart of your identity. This is who you are. This is who you have been created to be. You are created and set free to make a difference in this world. But at times we underestimate the difference that we can make by sharing our salt and our light with others, especially when we're tired and we're feeling low and we don't really have much to offer anyhow. And we think there's probably going to be lots of others out there who do feel up for it, so the world probably doesn't need us to shine it or to season it. But those are times when we forget that salt and light are found deep within our beings. We just need to show up, to share them and receive them, to commit to putting one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, receiving and sharing all that is ripe for us each day by God's grace. Trusting that grace is enough to help us through it. And in winter seasons like ours, it's not hard to see what happens when people do not offer extra help and do not share their salt and light. Sidewalks and roads remain uncleared, and it's difficult or impossible for people to safely travel or walk upon them. Cars and buses and trains stop without people giving a bit of help to make them move along again. Yet life can move on even when there's snow outside. Life can go on even when it's dark outside. For even then, there is always salt and light to share and receive. What are ways that you can share share your salt and light this winter? Perhaps it will snow again. And if you are able-bodied, please, more able-bodied than me, help your neighbor who isn't, and take your shovel and remove some snow and sprinkle a little bit of salt so it's safe for them to get out of the house and live. You're the salt of the earth. Perhaps there will be weeks on end again when the sun does not shine. And if someone that you know has been stuck inside for some time, give them a call or a visit. Turn on the light and let the light shine upon them to see that they're not alone. You are the light of the world. Even in harsh times like the ones we face, the gifts of salt and light we have to offer each other helps us to get through it all. They are the very gifts of life that sustain us and remind people that life is still here for us to live, even if we don't always want to get outside and live it. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. When you are called to be salt and light, it means that what you already have to give is the gift to sustain someone. You have already been made ready to give it. You are not to underestimate yourself and the difference that you can make in this world. I know it's hard at times to look at ourselves and see that there is enough light and salt to share with others, especially if we've lived through seasons and people did not want to receive what we have to offer, even when we were feeling brave enough to let our light shine, or brave enough to share our salt with others. I know it's not always easy to want to let our light shine, and sometimes the reception that we receive from others, the jealousy, the judgment, the misunderstanding, the anger, the refusal to accept our gifts, can stop us from letting our light shine and letting our light emerge, and we end up hiding who we are because there isn't always enough space for us to shine. And I think that sometimes our inability to receive God's gifts or our own jealousy for the ways that God works in others, why does God have to be so shiny in others? Right? That jealousy can get in the way of being salt and light, especially when we try to prevent others from sharing the gifts that they have been given by God. And these are times when we may even find ourselves guilty of trying to put a basket over someone else's light and stopping their purpose to shine, because we're afraid that it's going to diminish our own light. But who are we to stop the work of God within us all? Who are we to try to hide our own light or hide someone else's light? Salt and light are who we are. It's who you are. God lives and works within us and amongst us and through us, and by grace we are given as an offering to others in need of tasting and glimpsing God. The power of God's grace at work within us and raising us to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world is the very thing that will help to sustain someone's life. We're all people in whom the power of God's grace is made visible in our imperfections and our brokenness. People in whom God's glory shines because of what grace does in and through us. People who are raised up time and time again to not hide, to not be hidden, but to be raised from our brokenness, from our sin, in order to shine. Raised to see that even in our brokenness and our sin, God shines. Grace is enough to shine through us as we are. God's light is in each and every one of us, and when we all shine together, it makes the most beautiful rainbow of light there is to see, because each person has a different color of salt or a different color of light. One person's light cannot possibly diminish another person's light because it comes from God. God cannot diminish God's own self, even in times when we do feel diminished. Now I have to confess that I often come to a point when I wonder, oh God, I'm not so sure that I've got enough light or salt within me to serve your people. It's true. It's sometimes difficult to be in a role where I'm asked to give when I have seasons of feeling empty, just like everyone else. But when I have seasons of low energy, just like everyone else. And I know that what the gospel seems to ask of us is just so impossible at times. Yet because we're called to serve, because we're told that we're salt and light, I trust that God needs to just show up in order to give us something ripe enough to serve and salty enough to serve and bright enough to shine. And in those times when I think I have nothing to give, which they come often actually, I spend even more time in prayer to receive what God's grace has to give me. And I'm always surprised that that's enough. Salt and light are gifts of grace freely given to us, and not something we can produce on our own. And when we've lost our saltiness, when our light has become dim, grace can make us salty again and make our lights shine brightly again.